Only banks worried about cybersecurity incident response. How many remember the UK, London, getting hit last year by WannaCry and all the hospitals were down? In 2017, the very first life support or medical device had ransomware on it. Now it's life or death situation. There is a company that makes monitors, heart monitors, and they just found out that it could be attacked. They did a pen test on it, vulnerability assessments, but it's already been put inside many, many people's bodies. So the question was, do they wait until the event happens knowing it's being attacked as part of this cybersecurity incident response? Do they pull it out and maybe kill somebody during the operation? So a lot of issues are coming up around cybersecurity we didn't have 2 years ago. The number of breaches of small companies getting hit are tremendously. I want to give some background, then I'll go through what you need to do and how to do it. So a little bit of history. The WannaCry, 104 countries were hit at one time. The attack venue has been developed by the National Security Agency in the US, I'm sorry. It was supposed to be used as a cyber weapon, but it was stolen from the agency. Now we have issues. You know, they should have notified, my opinion, the world. We had this taken, let's start working on what we can do when it happens. What are some ways? They didn't. They waited till it was actually used because they hadn't had the solution. They weren't planning on fixing it. They just wanted to cause the problem. How it was stopped, there was a 22-year-old who discovered the kill switch finally after a week. But when somebody's creating something, if they're going to be using it as cyber warfare, I believe they should have the kill switch prepared also. Antidotes for cybersecurity, we hadn't thought of that. We only thought of antidotes for weapons being used by a warfare. Now we need an antidote for cybersecurity. The Dutch government website was out in 2014. Going back. LinkedIn, Dropbox, FormSpring, they were hit back in 2012. They were hit again in 2014. They were hit again. Do you notice the patterns? And what did they not do each time? They didn't have an incident response plan each time. Verizon, that's a US-based phone company. They were out. It wasn't discovered for many, many months. They were taking everybody's phone numbers, their emails, all the information they had. No incident response plan. This is cybercrime, cyber espionage, hacktivism. Look at the cybercrime numbers. But what's also important, look at the hacktivism, the 7.9, where they just do it just to be fun. You know what the average age is of a hacktivist?
10 years, maybe.
18. Well, the average age, you're saying a 10-year-old?
Yeah.
18. Close. It's 13 to 17 is the average age of a hacktivist. They're doing it for fun, and they're good. They're doing it just because their grandparents probably wrote on walls and did graffiti. They think it's funny. They don't understand the repercussions, and they're hitting companies. And they don't know how to fix it. These slides are going to be available. I've signed a statement, but you can have the slides afterwards, so they'll be available for you. I'm very into education. I taught for New York University. I've taught for John Jay, I've taught for different universities as an adjunct. Teaching is very important, so when I do things, I wanna make sure you learn. So I made the slides available for you afterwards. 2 years ago, Global Forum, Global Technology Risk, according to this, 27 world economies said the most important thing they were worried about was cyber warfare. These are publications hackers read. I mentioned the magazine that I have. For those of you who relate, I have an article in this magazine, which is cyber warfare. If you give me your card later, we're gonna do a raffle. Somebody will get the 4-page article that summarizes everything. And for the rest of you who give me the cards, I'll email it out to you. So these are some of the magazines that they're reading. A lot of information out there, but this is what the same magazines we're reading. And by the way, for those of you, I know some of you connect to me on LinkedIn, I post 3 or 4 articles a day from magazines. So if you connect with me on LinkedIn, you'll see them and the links. I make sure they're from a pure source, so you don't have to worry about clicking on the link. But I pull from these magazines. So now you have the background. Now let's get started on what we need to do. Any questions on the background? Anybody surprised of anything? How about the 13 to 17-year-olds? Did that surprise anybody? A few people. And 10 is where it's going to go next. You know, my daughter was programming in BASIC when she was 9 years old. She came home and cried. She said, I'm so embarrassed. My friends know how to program and I don't. It's humiliating. I'm already 9. Okay. So her school had a program for 10-year-olds to teach them BASIC. Then she learned HTML from scratch because she was homesick for a few weeks and had nothing else to do. So she downloaded stuff from the internet and taught herself. Came home one day, her website had all been set up. I said, you can use other softwares out there. You don't have to do it by scratch. She said, oh, this is more fun. It only took 2 weeks. She's not a cybersecurity expert. She's not a computer expert. She's simply an average person, or the average kids.
Young.
This is what's out there. They go today. It's different. She's actually a data engineer. That's what she does now that she graduated from school. So she works with that. But here's why you want an efficient program. And you're going to sell this to management. How many here are consultants? Okay. How many work for a firm or organization? How many are unemployed? Because I'm not seeing a lot of hands. Let's try again. How many consult or audit? Okay. How many auditors? So I know. Okay. And consultants? Okay. How many train for PECB? Anybody? Okay, good. And you two don't work.
Yeah, all together.
Pardon me?
All together.
Okay. All together. Okay. So, we maintain continuous operations, mitigate revenue loss, respond with speed and agility. Okay, let's take that. You can only respond from the time you find it. I did full incident response planning for one company. It took me 6 months. I came in, it was an insurance company. The CSIO was brand new. He said, this is our plan. He showed me it. This is our cybersecurity incident response plan. I said, great, I could start with that. He takes it and throws it in the trash. He said, don't even read it. I don't want to pay your time to read it. Start from scratch. When we finished, I suggested they have somebody come in and go through the last 5 years of materials when the last CISO was there. I said, if their incident response plan was poor, their planning may have been poor. They found out 3 years before they had malware. It's a Trojan. A Trojan means it's sitting there and you don't even know where it's coming in. But it was a time Trojan, not used very often. So it could be activated at a certain time. It hadn't been activated yet, they thought. Someone said, I think that's this. I think doesn't work well in cybersecurity. So they had to, by protocol, at least in the state's requirements for insurance companies, because they could not prove it hadn't been, that there'd been no damage, they had to declare a cybersecurity event. They had to declare an incident. Because we'd done all the planning ahead of time, they were only in the newspaper 3 days. 3 days. It's a major thing. But they had encryption. That helps. So finding out ahead of time, we do the playbooks, the plans, what do we have in place? That's why I said 27001 and the 27035 kind of work together. What's there? What's in place? And oh my gosh, what do we do if it doesn't work? Did anyone ever make a meal and it didn't turn out the way you expected?
Always.
Okay? I mean, I have a friend of mine who says until the smoke alarm goes on, he doesn't know it's done. So, same thing in cybersecurity. Mitigate revenue loss. And companies say, oh, you're not going to mitigate anything. There's no cost. There's cost of insurance, claims. You have to pay. By the way, I told you I'm going to be doing 3 webinars for people that post the reviews. One of them is going to be on cybersecurity insurance and how internationally different riders and such. So we'll talk about that later. I can't do everything in one session. But we mitigate fines. Mitigate lawsuits. There was a bank, international bank, that was sued when they had a problem. They had an incident response plan. They had done everything. Everything was documented. They had encryption. They had followed 2701 Annex A. They had everything in place, but it didn't work. But their response was good. When they went to court, they took everything with them. They did not have to pay one fine. The court said they had done tremendous due diligence, international, many countries suing them, not one fine paid. That's unusual, but not one fine from them. So different plans sounds similar. Computer incident response plan, that just means your systems went down. It's not a disaster recovery plan, it's when you're trying to fix the system when it's down, problem. Some countries call it a CSIRP, Cybersecurity Incident Response Plan. Some countries call it a CSIRT, same thing. Call it by the team name, call it. So ISIRT is used per ISO 27035. That's the term internationally. So all different terms, those 3 mean the same. So why do we have it? Well, we just talked about security breaches constantly happening. We talked about everyone's being hit. You can't prevent a breach. The FBI in the US has estimated what they thought it would be. They went out internationally. And the World Economic Forum had talked about what they thought it would be. They're estimating 80% chance that every organization will eventually be hit. That's a high number, eventually. So they're saying it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. If you have things ahead of time, when I do my incident response, how many here are technical? Okay, so for this group, I break it, my plans into Unix, Linux, Windows. I have it all broken up into each of the technologies that I'll be using. So I have all, what happens here? How do I know in Windows I have a problem? How do I know in Unix I'm having a problem? How do I know this server's having a problem? For the management side of it, it's how do I talk to the IT side so they can tell me what's actually going on? How do I understand when they say this is what's happening? Can you translate that? So when we do proper CSIRT planning, we have all the translations in place. We do the training. So management who are running the events can talk to the IT people that understand it. More than 60% of IT people cannot do forensics. And that's okay. When they learned it, they learned to do what they do. If I can do Unix, I can't do Windows. I can't do Linux. I can't do, if I'm good with the databases, I may not be great with something else. The same thing for forensics. So you may need to have a separate forensics team that's a contractor that you're going to bring in. Don't wait until you have an event to start interviewing them, to check their backgrounds, to check their security. These people are going to be in your system. The first people that are gonna apply are the people that are the attackers. Do your checks ahead of time. So when you're putting together your program, you need an information security, governance and risk program. Management has to run the program. It has to be in place. Does anyone who's in an organization know who has responsibility for your incident response planning? It might be the CISO. It might be the CIO. In one company I came into, they put it under business continuity disaster recovery, who had no background in cyber. So where it resides is very important. ISO 27035 does not say where it has to be, but knowing it helps a lot. And I just realized I don't have a clock here. 15, it's 25 after, okay, fine. So then everybody agreed we're gonna take an extra 5 minutes because we were asked to start late. Is that okay with everybody in the room?
Yes.
Okay. So finding that out, when you're an auditor, the first thing you should ask when you come in is who in your organization has responsibility for this? And they'll say, oh, probably. Probably whom? It needs to be documented. They need a charter, a team charter. Just like regular project management, that cybersecurity team needs a charter because you're pulling people from their everyday jobs to do this work on the side. So it sounds simple. These are some of the steps you're going to go through. You're going to obtain management support and buy-in. Without that, you have nothing. The first slide I gave you, with all the first few slides about what's happened, that's how you gain management support. You determine your strategic plan. Are we going to have a consultant come in and do it? Are we going to do the planning ourselves? Are we going to have somebody come in? The way I like to do a planning as a consultant is I like to work with the teams. They know intuitively what they're going to see, what makes them nervous. But I also have teams for the legal side. I have a team for human resources. I have a team for physical security. And they're set up the exact same phrases as I use for the technical teams. So I'm not going to read the list, but these are some of the best practices for starting. So you need a systematic approach. ISO 27035 is great for a systematic approach. But the main thing you want to do is outline who are the partners you're going to work with. Do you have permission to work with HR, legal? Maybe it's their outside counsel. They still need a plan. And everybody needs to be coming in for all the training. So what I do is I put together a template. I meet with each of the groups and say, let's go through. What are we doing for preparation? How do we identify that we've had an attack so we don't have to know it 3 years from now? What are the signs? You know, I know that if these 5 ports are being pinged way too many times, somebody's trying to get into my database. So my database administrator needs to know that, but needs to be working with networking, so because network may not be telling them. So communications have to be set up. They have to know all the legal, regulatory, and business issues per state, per industry. In New York State, the health, they don't have to declare an incident unless 500 records have been breached. If 499 records have been breached, they don't have to declare an incident. It's 499 events. Remember, an event is small, an incident is large. Communication strategies. How are they going to communicate with each other? I've seen companies have disasters where they had nothing in place from a cybersecurity point of view. They were talking about things on their cell phones. What are the chances that the attacker's listening to a cell phone? High, really high. Landlines only. Do they even have a landline to be communicating? Crisis management team, business continuity. They still have to be working with the business continuity teams because cyber may say, I'm sorry, we have to find out the signature of the attacker. we're gonna keep letting this event go. But we're still gonna be attacked. It's malware, we know it's coming in, we've got forensics needs to trace it. We're gonna go maybe a week, maybe a month. But we really prefer to not be using corrupted data. So we want the disaster recovery team to start using the backup plans, but we're gonna let this go live at the same time. So we have two things going on at the same time. Now the problem comes when you have a small company and you're expecting your technology team to be helping your disaster recovery team and to be helping your cyber team's incident response at the same time. So when you're planning, you have to plan on the fact that one person can't be in two places doing the same thing. You're a small company, you're gonna have to arrange for other consultants to come in on call. I have a few firms that have me listed as this cybersecurity incident response officer. I'm not always gonna be available, but I will be available at least by phone to start the process and then fly in from wherever I'm at. And I have other people that can come in my place. But they have to be trained and understand that firm's culture, because every firm is different. So some of the standards, it should be 27001, 27035, and many more. COBIT, ISO 2705, information security risk management. Also something you want to look at. Remember, we could probably fix things ahead of time. These are some of the other standards, and they kind of go in order. So when I'm putting together, aside from the ones I showed you originally, these are good ones to look at, to just read before you start. But you're following 27035 verbatim. So cyber defense and response. You have to have a security policy, not one policy. You need a policy for segregation of duties ahead of time. You try to mitigate. You need a policy for awareness training. You need a policy for encryption and protection of how you're going to do. You need a policy for this and that and this. I have one firm that has 28 policies. And there were many more they could have chosen from. So you go through, decide which policies you need to have, which ones apply. They did a security assessment. It's called a risk early warning indicator. Can our people do this? Do we have anybody trained? Do we need to bring somebody in? Security controls and countermeasures that are in place. When you're coming into plan, you ask to see their last security audit. Hopefully they've had a 2701 audit. If not, as part of your planning, you may want to go through and do a quick audit, a gap analysis of your own firm. What don't we have in place? This is continuous. A lot of I know people think they're just going to come in and do cybersecurity planning. It's sort of like planning for a party. I can't start cooking unless I've done the grocery shopping, unless I've made the list, unless I have some friends. So there's prerequisites before you can actually start. Instead of using the ISO, when we teach the class for PECB, we teach that you may want to jump back and forth between NIST, which is the National Institute of Standards and Technology, originally US being adopted. They have it broken out. Preparation, detection, analysis, containment, eradication, recovery, post-incident activity. ISO 2701 has a little bit different wording, but it doesn't break it out the same way. So this is easier when you're going through the first time you're planning, and then you can adjust it. Either one is fine. These are the terms that ISO 27035 uses. Prepare, identify, assess, respond, and learn. The difference is they're saying post-incident activity, a little bit different than learning. You're doing an after-action report. So it's, some people like this clearer. Whichever terminology you want to use is fine. So some of the motivators, why you do this. Computers, new laws are coming in every country. In some states, if you don't have planning and you're hit, you can't show due diligence. There's fines, there's penalties. You may lose tremendous amount of customers and faith. For some reason or another, many people stay on Facebook even though they were hit. You know, that we change our passwords when they're trying to put security in. I don't know if anybody read this week. Facebook is looking at 3 different companies to purchase. They're cybersecurity companies. They're going to buy their own cybersecurity company. So it's one of the ways that they're mitigating, because if they own a company doing it for other people, they'll certainly be doing it for them. Systems and network administrators alone can't do this. There's lots of assets in a firm. An asset is anything the organization considers critical. That's their research. That's their finances. So you make a list of all the things an attacker might want to go after. And is it protected? These are some questions that I come in and ask people when I'm doing planning. These are just some of them. Again, these slides will be available for you. You want to take a photograph of it, it's fine. But these are some questions that I ask. How often do you do testing of your incident response, if they have one? And how often do I hear we don't? Was your management involved in the incident response? No, they were busy. Who's running your incident? The management. Okay. Did you bring all of your IT people in? No, we don't want to take them away from work. Okay. Who's going to be doing your recovery? The IT people. Okay. So who showed up for this training? Anybody that's going to be involved? Well, we had people there taking notes. Unacceptable. If you had management support behind you, that would never have happened. They would be there, they would be supporting it, they'd do the test. So cyber defense, your policies have to be there, controls, assess your security threat. I went through this already, it's a repeat. The effort's never ending. By the way, if I repeat slides, it's on purpose. I want to make sure you're learning it. It comes back in. So we did the summary of 27035. This is some of it. You establish a security policy. Policies. All of them. You update your information security and risk management policies at least annually. You create your incident management plan. Now that's according to 27035. Having done policies that have done programs that actually worked from clients that were hit, I suggest, aside from the plan, you also do a cybersecurity incident response program. In that program, I put down which policies are necessary, how often they're going to be audited, how they're going to be doing a training, how they're doing everything, and I call that my program. In my plan, now I have how I'm actually going to do the incident response. But my program is everything that I'm going to be doing to make sure the organization's secure ahead of time. Does that make sense? Okay. It's an extra document. That's for management to read, for management to approve, for management to use to budgets. Makes it much easier. Your plan, let's assume your CISO, Chief Information Security Officer, is going to run it. That's their Bible. That's what they're going to use. All the teams are going to be in there. They have org charts for a cybersecurity incident response team. They have names of who's on those teams. It's very detailed. Establishing incident response team. Remember, we said it could be 2 different names. Technical and other support. Creating security awareness and training for the entire organization. Last year, worldwide, the #1 cause of breaches was phishing. Somebody clicked on an email. #1 cause worldwide. So if you can train people, you're helping to, ahead of time, you help reduce that risk. Lessons learned. I am partners with a software company. They're not here, they're only in States. And we run, for our clients, we run once a month they get a phishing exercise. Each employee gets a different one. So they can't turn to somebody and say, did you get this? No? A report card comes out. So-and-so hit this. They have 90% now. Now they're at 80%. Now they're at 70%. Once they hit 70%, that means 3 months in a row, or 3 times during the year they failed, they have to go back in for more awareness training. No punishment, no penalties. People are not afraid of it happening, but they're just gonna be more careful. We had one company that only 20% of the people passed the first test. Then we did the awareness training. Then we kept going. 6 months later, 90% did well. 90% of the employees. It's a big difference. And the phishing exercises got harder and harder and harder. So benefit of a structured approach. You have overall security. You're looking at the business impacts that happen. What are some business impacts that happen from cybersecurity? You have, can you just close the door for me? Thank you. So some of the impacts you have are loss of customers, loss of funds, loss of reputation. Any of those easy to get back? Funds. Loss of reputation, it's a big deal. Now, most of you are not from the US. I think I'm one of the few people here from there, well, except for one. Outside the US, did anyone hear of some of the major incidents that have happened in the US? Cyber events, different things that have happened to stores and such? Because they're all over the internet.
Elections.
Pardon me?
The election.
The election. Well, that we don't know if that was Facebook's problem. But yeah, but not quite malware, but it's a different type of attack. But different attacks, different things out there, and they're known. I know things that have happened in other countries. It's not just going to stay local. Your reputation's ruined around the world now. All over. You want to gather forensics evidence where it's available during the incident, not when it's fixed. You have to make sure your IT people are trained not to destroy evidence. Many IT people have destroyed evidence because it's very hard not to. If you're supposed to fix something, think about yourself, for those who are not IT. If you have a faucet that just the top came off and it's spraying all over the place, what's your first reaction? Shut off the water. Stop the leak. By shutting off the water without containing it, depending on how you shut the water off, you might be damaging some parts. So, knowing the forensics, knowing how to mitigate, knowing how to fix it, they have to be trained in that. So, your main controls you want to have are how do we stop it and contain it, if you choose to stop it. You may decide to let it go so you find out who the attacker is. How do we eradicate it? That means wipe it clean so it's not anywhere in our system. And how do we know it's wiped clean? Somebody the other day had a disaster attack, and they said, we believe it's wiped clean. Not a good press release. We know. You want to have penetration tests again. You want to have vulnerability assessments again before you ever go live. You need your analysis reports and your follow-ups. Now, this comes from the ISO for project management. Little standards and processes of how you put things together. This is my chart, not theirs, but it's based on the ISO for project management. But you can also use PMI's project management for those who don't have a project management background. PMBOK, PMBOK, you get it at pmi.org. It's a great tool on project management if you need it. But this tells you how you're going to go through, all your policies, broken it out. This is one method I use. I put together swim lanes. Where does it go? Where do I work together? So I have a process in place. And notice I have big business continuity in there too. So when I'm running an event, it's easier to look at pictures. People are stressed. You can't read a lot of narrative. So you need both. You want to make sure your cybersecurity incident response team is brought into your information security process. That you're using the same terminology. Because they're different. Some IT people call them run books. Anybody here know what a run book is? Shows you how to run the systems, how you're going to run each thing. A playbook Anybody like soccer? Anybody know what soccer is? You don't know what soccer is? Foosball? Okay. Football? Okay, each one has a different name, right? So, when you play, you kick, right? Anybody know a game you kick any balls at all? Okay, we got it. So, they have a playbook. The coach is there with a playbook. You do this, you do that, you do this, you do that. You need a playbook for each team. So you have a playbook for Unix, a playbook for Windows, a playbook for the database people. You have a playbook for your managers. You have a playbook for each and every one. So this tells them on the same phases, just like I showed you both either the NIST phases or the ISO phases, they're broken out exact same phases. So everybody's in phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, using the same terminology. Make sense? Am I losing anybody? Okay. Again, we're going back to before you start. Before you start, you do a gap knowledge. Do we understand security risk of our organization? Do we even know how we might get hit? Do we know what's important that an attacker might want? If we're a school, well, they may want school grades. They may want to change their grades. If we're a hospital, I mentioned to you that they've had 2017, the first ransomware was done on a life support system. I mentioned to you that they now know one of the devices that's actually been implemented into people can be attacked. So what is there? What could be attacked? What can you do to deal with the damage? You want to make sure that your financial institutions, your retailers, everyone is at risk. Mitigation to tell employees, I'm not going to go through this in detail, but you'll have this material. This is some of the things I tell my trainees when I'm going through for awareness training. Encrypt data, update your software, use VPN, use password managers, use the Internet of Things, shut off where it says you can access any other devices you pass by. Shut off where it says that you can automatically connect to other websites and such, coming in. Shut off anything that's automatic. Know what you're controlling. So outsourcing, we talked about that you need to know who you're outsourcing to. You want to draft a non-conformity report. This is actually from our materials in 2701. Go through the past insurance. Go through past audits. What problems did they have, and are they fixed? And if not your responsibility, instant response, to be fixing them. It's your unless you're in part of the program. Somebody should be fixing them. But you need to know what you have to work against, what might happen today while they're being fixed. You want to make sure you have all your records. Some mitigations, you build a security and network. Protect cardholders. We know all this. We know monitor and test networks. That's great. Everyone's doing that. Maybe, maybe not. But what if they fail? So some of the attacker tools that they're going to be using, someone on your company needs to know what attacker tools they could use and how they work. Attacker toolkits, backdoors, email generators. So many applications now. People are bringing people in. They're going overseas to different countries, whatever that might be. Or international. Remember today, have you done a background check on those people when they're putting an application together for you? Do you know that they don't have a backdoor so they can come in a year from now and get back into that system anytime they want? Have you checked it? For every application you design internally, it needs to be checked by another person to make sure there's no backdoor. I don't care how long somebody's worked for you. We're talking about anti-bribery, we're talking about everything else. You trust no one when it comes to security. You trust, but you verify. Personal awareness training, we talked about that. Social engineering, teaching social engineering. I used to have a job years ago. Part of my job was to call up and pretend that I was someone else to try to get information. Try to get their names, try to get their phone numbers. And I would say, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I'm supposed to meet somebody. I'm standing on the corner. It's our first date. I messed up on the first date. This is supposed to be our second date. It's actually our first date. Oh my gosh, please, 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 just give me a cell number. If I don't call him right now, oh, please, please, please. And some young woman on the phone saying, oh my gosh, I know that happened to me. I'll give it to you, but don't tell anybody. Okay, thank you. Now I have information. Social engineering. We were testing to see what information we could get. Obviously, we were the good guys. We didn't use it, but we could have. More security breaches every day. You want me to have a quick response. You want a checklist to mitigate the network. Now, we talked about your program, your plan for managing it. You need playbooks for every different type. We talked about this a lot, right? Review. Some of the questions we talked about. How big is my cybersecurity and response team? As big as you need it to be, but as small as you can manage. Make sense? So, your objectives. In your plan, I write down in my plan, this is my outline for my plan. And it's also my outline for my program. I keep the exact same outline, but the program has this much information. My plan has this much information. My program includes how am I going to protect the world in my company. My plan includes how am I going to deal with my cybersecurity incident response. So my objectives, my scope, my assumptions, my ownership, it's all there. Sorry. I put together, these are the phases I break it out into. And again, you'll have these notes, so don't bother, copying, you'll have it. But I break it out into how do I prepare. This is my playbook. This is my playbook. Each playbook has how do I prepare. Legal has theirs, Unix has theirs, everybody. How do I detect an event? HR says, well, somebody called and said that their check was wrong. Okay. Did somebody go in and change it? Is that money going someplace else? Was it an incident? Different people, how do they know? How do they do analysis? How do they do declaration? How do they do their response? How do they eradicate? How do they recover? What do they do post-incident? These are the phases that I use. And they work. So you need your program, your teams, your plan, your playbooks, your policy reviews, your gap analysis. You notice I've mentioned these things like 4 times, right? Each of them. Your analysis, you identify the scope of the project. You research, gather data. These are some references I've given you. These are references that you may want to look at that have some great free information. ISACA, FFIC Section J, FFIC.gov. It's a US document. You can use it anywhere. It tells you how to deal with third parties to make sure that they're not going to be attacked. Great checklist. These are all free information you can get. Account holder communications. Maybe you have to tell the account holders in a certain time that something's happened. This is going to be under legal. You've done your gap analysis. What are we supposed to have? What's our key performance indicators? Are they working? You're going to give that to audit if you're in a company. Let them take care of that. Risk early warning indicators. What do we have in place? How do we know that things are? You're going to give that to audit. Let them take care of that. Split out everything. And they have it all the time, not just for the project, continuous checking. Do you have personnel security competence? Do you have appropriate defense mechanisms? What's in place? A lot of planning before you start. How well is our system protected? You're going to interview network. You're going to interview all the people. You have support teams in place. You have response. How do we train? Okay, this is a review. How do we train? How do we make sure people have things? How robust should our response be? I suggest every 2 hours you have a call, you meet by phone, whatever way you're doing it, but you have, especially if it's international. Every 2 hours you have a status call, very quickly. Where are we for this phase? Where are we for this phase? Unix, where are we? Linux, where are we? Legal, where are we? HR, where are we? What are you doing? Where are we going? CISO needs to know every 2 hours what's happening. Companies that do it more often than that will not give people time to work. I have forms ready, written out, so as they're writing it, the forms are ready, so they can keep that status. Why? For forensics, Also for insurance purposes. Also, so management can see those reports and say, what did they say? Where are they? And they have these reports. Resourcefulness, timely, sufficient response. I know how often my sufficient response is going to be. I don't wait. Ready to go. Team's ready to go. Phone number's ready to go. I practice not once, not twice. My training, when I'm first doing a plan, they bring their plans in and we read them. Then we go through and we read them again. And so Unix says, well, I'm going to get this information from Windows. And Windows said, well, I don't have that in my plan. You have to let me know what I need to let you know. So we work through it all on paper, everybody together. Some technical questions I'm giving you that you can, is this helpful to take these when you get the notes later? Yes? Okay, good. So these are some technical questions that even if you're not technical, you can ask your IT. Okay, I'm giving you cheat sheets. So you have this. Incidents, what can we expect? I gave you some events of what happened to other companies. I told you I put articles every day on LinkedIn, at least 3 or 4 a day. Read those articles, not just from me, but from anybody. Then I don't write them, I'm just finding what's out there. Do a risk assessment. Incident management goals and visions. This is in my plan. This is under ISO 27035. How to write my policy. My purpose statement, same as any other policy. Purpose statement, my applicability and scope, my effective date, my policy standards, the background, my definitions, especially if it's international. So management understands techies, techies understands managementese. 2 different languages. Technical people have their own language, management has their own language. I come up with a joint glossary. These are some policies that are out there. You'll find a list of policies that are recommended in ISO 27002. Third-party service providers, I would go to ffiec.gov. Tells you everything you need to know about your third parties. Your playbooks, all of this is in ISO 27035. We talked about this. This is a review. We're preparing, we're planning, we're assessing, responding, and learning. I have action sections in my plan. What actions we do, what recovery teams come in when, who's going to be on those teams, what are the responsibilities, what's the technical checklist, everything together. I decide my document structure. I showed you some of them in their picture with swim lanes. Some of them have narrative. You know your organization's culture, what works best. So I work about initiating my event, resolving my event, and terminating it. Those are the only 3 things I care about in incident response, just those 3. Who are some of my stakeholders? It might be internal people, it might be your incident responders coming in. Maybe you have government agencies or legal entities that you have to contact when you've been affected. Each organization's different. I would have 1 playbook for each topic. I have 1 playbook for every team on breach. 1 playbook for every team on denial of service. 1 playbook for every team on ransomware, because how you respond is different. I work on developing those playbooks, making sure that they're vetted. We've checked them. I do interviews of every team personally as a consultant. You can do it yourselves. Does the solution work? I make sure that while they're working on their thinking process, I say, these are my open door hours. You can come in during this time and get help. I want them thinking about it because they're going to work with it. I break out my severity levels in my plan and in my playbooks. Severity 1 is, I made these things up, when incident severe. Severity 2, when it's significant. Severity 3, when it's minor, harmless email, nobody clicked on it. They clicked on it, but we were able to isolate it rather. Non-incident, the information that they got, we don't care. We're not going to do a response, we're just going to clean it up. So whatever severity levels you want to call it. Excuse me. You want to make sure that they look for patterns. That is, was there a super ID created? Was there recent escalation of privileges? This is the stuff they're doing before an event. You want to make sure that everyone's looking for these. Someone's on vacation and somebody's using their logs. They're logging in. And you know that this firm doesn't allow you to work on vacation. whatever the policy might be. You want to do the exercises. You want to do a lot of exercises. I bring 15 scenarios into one exercise. 15. I want to stress everybody out. If they can keep their jackets on by the time I finish my test wasn't hard enough. Jackets off, ties off, then I know it's working. Hard, fast, rushed. I put the heat very high. Just so you know, I probably didn't mention this, just most of you. I did 4 years active duty and National Guard and Reserve, and I was a commander. I retired as lieutenant colonel. So make it hard. Heat is better, cold, shift it back and forth. You want them to be stressed when the final trainings come so they can deal with the pressure when they have the training. You train the same as you're going to work. Third-party testing. If you have a third party, you don't just take a statement that they're working well. You bring them in. You have them do the testing with you live. Is it working? How are you going to respond to us? Now, what do you mean you're going to be on vacation? You can't be here for our test. You have to be here. So with this, I know we're going to do the review. This is the summary. I've given you a lot in a short period of time. We agreed to stay 5 minutes to do questions. I'll stay longer if anybody needs. This is how you can contact me.